Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about visual hierarchy and just the different components and the design elements that we're going to cover in this upcoming unit of intermediate art. So, what is visual hierarchy? Hopefully you've heard this term before, whether in design survey or in intro to drawing with Mr. Creighton or Mr. Jers, but essentially visual hierarchy is the principle of arranging elements to show their order of importance. So we're looking at these two images on the side here. The artist or the designer is making some elements larger, some elements brighter, depending on contrast, but essentially it's arranging them so that what you look at first is the most important thing that the artist wants the viewer to see. So you would think about size, so using different larger elements, those are more easily seen. Color, brighter colors typically attract more attention than muted ones. So if you have these brighter tones, so like this Smith, when it talks about Jane Smith, Smith and Jane stand out a little bit more. Contrast is huge, so having that dramatically contrasted colors, they're more eye-catching to see. Repetition, so maybe you're repeating different styles, and that can suggest the content is related. Proximity, so how closely these elements are placed next to each other to make them seem like they're related. And then white space also, so that there's more space around the elements and that helps draw the eyes toward them. And then obviously texture and style, so having those richer textures stand out over flatter ones. We're also going to talk about focal point, and this one I know you've heard of before because we've talked about it in other projects, but focal point is the most interesting part of something, or it's just something that stands out first to you. So looking at this image on the right, looking at the apples, this red apple should hopefully stand out to you first, mostly because it's contrasting, right? It's complementary colors. And remember, we talked about how complementary colors next to each other, they make each other pop. So this red pops out against the green. And then eye movement. That is the way a viewer's eye moves through a work of art. By clever placement of objects in the picture plane of our artwork, we can control the eye movement of the viewers of our artwork. So this gives us, as the artist, more control over how the viewer actually interacts with our compositions. So if we take a look at this image here, this artist strategically put the trees and aligned them in a way so that it allowed the viewer's eyes to go throughout the whole entire painting. Now we want to see that in our designs as well, in our compositions that we create, because as the artist, we have that power to achieve what we want our viewers to see. If we want our viewers to see the whole entire piece, obviously we need to arrange our elements to make sure that their eyes do so. And lastly, composition. This is where all the separate elements come together to form a whole. When all of your type, your images, your graphics, and colors all come together to form one cohesive design. So we're going to talk a little bit more about composition and how to create a successful one. Because not that our projects in the past haven't looked super awesome, but I want to make sure that you guys are using some of these tips to make a successful composition. The first one is rules of thirds. So hopefully you've heard this one before. Both Mr. Creighton and Mr. Jers and I teach that in our intro level classes. But essentially it is a composition in which the image is divided evenly into thirds, both vertically and horizontally. And then the subject of the image is placed either at the intersection of those dividing lines or along one of the lines itself. It helps create a balanced and symmetrical design. And also another tip is to have that strong focal point, because your design is telling a specific story. So be sure to choose a focal point that helps the story get told in the strongest, most effective way. So some ways to draw focus are through techniques like scale, making them larger or smaller, contrast, so talking about our colors that brighten each other or are bold, and then leading lines. So here's some examples to show you of rules of thirds and what that looks like. And again, thinking about black and white and how color pops off. So register here, like obviously if you're looking at this top picture, this lady should be your focal point. She's in that plane, but we also have this bright green here that says register here that makes it pop out at you, and then has that high contrast against the black and white as an ad example. But again, noticing that the rules of thirds creates a very balanced piece. Some more tips: leading lines, that is positioning certain lines and shapes in certain ways so you can control the viewpoint of your design, aka where your viewers' eyes go when they see your design. So using arrows or different thickness or types of lines pointing towards your focal point or your info, hence why I put an arrow in here, and I bet you your eyes went directly to this bolded area. Scale and size is another helpful tip. So using visual hierarchy, which is what we just talked about, making the more important information stand out by making it larger than the rest is a great way to communicate how important it is. So making font larger than the rest, again, helps it stand out, and then it also creates that higher importance. So here are some examples of some leading lines. So the top image was the font, making them larger. So that before it was tiny little Jane Smith, and now that we made it larger, we know exactly the most important part, which is her name. So there's an example of leading lines on the left. All these lines are pointing to unspooling, and then it has the different information throughout. And then leading lines again. So instead of just doing dots, we have arrows and these lines in the background that help point to your focal point and can lead you in your viewer's eyes in the right direction. Some last other couple tips: balance, again, choosing to arrange your elements, text, images, etc. with balance in mind. So either having it symmetrical or asymmetrical really helps fill your design in your composition. Symmetrical is more design pleasing, like it's just more satisfactory to the mind, but asymmetrical is also a great design too. And then complementing elements, so choosing colors that are similar but not so many either, so choosing, I would say, 3 colors at the most, and then choosing fonts and images of similar style to complement each other, not overwhelm them. In this case, complementing is not opposite per se, but they should go together. So here's some examples that I'm going to talk about. So the middle one exactly, with the fonts, we have these nice 3 different fonts, 2 colors, very plain, very elegant, right? So we have some elegant with the Friday Night Party. We have this nice elegant Greystone Mansion, and then to complement it, you throw in a nice like almost a sans font that's all caps to kind of change it up a little bit. Same with the Rock and Ink. We have this nice fancy, and then to complement it, you want to go with something that's a little bit more toned down, more, not a, I wouldn't say a Times New Roman, but like a sans serif is a good one, or Arial is a good one as well. And then when it talks about same type of style throughout, so you want to make sure that the pictures, if you're using multiple different pictures, they have the same kind of style. One's not darker, one's not brighter than the other. They're all very, very similar. And again, you notice that there's not a crazy amount of colors either in either or any of these designs. Alright, last couple tips. Repetition makes for successful compositions. So to remain consistent and logical layout, try to take specific elements from one section of your design and apply it to other sections. So using similar fonts, shapes, and colors to repeat throughout your design. And white space. White space, when used strategically, can help boost your design's clarity and overall look by balancing out the more complicated and busy parts of your composition with space that helps your design to breathe. So simply just scaling down or not filling the whole page to help create that white space, it doesn't necessarily mean that your design is empty, but it's just allowing your viewers' eyes to focus on what is there without it being too chaotic. So here's some examples of just scaling it down a little bit, making it more simple, and leaving a little bit of white space on the outside allows the viewers to focus on what you actually want to portray in your ad. All right, that was it. Hopefully you guys will use some of these tips to create your ad for this project.